In a busy automotive dealership, the air was filled with the hum of chatter and the glimmer of polished cars. Flashes of vivid colors drew the attention of customers, most of whom were part of the predominantly white clientele, casually inspecting the latest models. The showroom was designed to entice, from the sleek sports cars to the comfortable family SUVs, all perfectly showcased under bright, flattering lights. Yet, among this group was a stark contrast: a well-dressed black attorney, exuding confidence and an air of quiet dignity. He stepped into the dealership with purpose, his eyes scanning the array of vehicles, both impressed and cautiously curious. As he approached a glossy red sports car, a figure loomed in the periphery of his vision. It was the security guard, a robust man with an intimidating presence and a set of firm, crossed arms. The guard's demeanor shifted as he zeroed in on the attorney, an immediate expression of suspicion crossing his face. "Excuse me, sir, do you need help?" he asked, a touch of condescension lacing his words. The tone was not one of genuine assistance, but something more tinged with distrust. The attorney paused, caught off guard by the abrupt interrogation. "Actually, I'm just looking. This model caught my eye," he replied, his voice steady but laced with underlying offense. The security guard seemed unmoved by the attorney's reasonable response. Instead, he leaned in slightly, eyebrows furrowed, as though trying to peer into the man's intentions. Without a hint of irony, he continued, "I'm afraid we have a policy here about who is allowed to be on the premises. It's just that, well, we don't want to risk any disturbances." The implication hung starkly in the air, crossing lines too numerous to ignore. The attorney felt the weight of the words, the chilling sense of being unwelcome in a place that should have been open to all, a feeling far too familiar. In that moment, murmurs began to ripple through the assembled customers. A small group had gathered near the entrance, and their expressions ranged from shock to unease. Some began to pull out their phones, documenting the instance as if they were spectators at a high-stakes drama unfolding before them. The once cheerful atmosphere soured into one of palpable tension, the kind that bundles itself tightly around the shoulders, making it hard to breathe. The attorney, visibly shaken and humiliated, took a deliberate step back, swallowing hard against the wave of disgrace washing over him, and turned to exit the premises. Yet, the security guard was relentless, still tailing him, his footsteps echoing in unnatural proximity. As the scene unfolded, it became a focal point within the showroom, a spectacle no one could ignore. Some customers exchanged glances, shared frowns, and whispered to one another, yet only a handful mustered the courage to step forward. The majority remained rooted in their indecision, too concerned about their own comfort to intervene in the face of something so blatant and unfair. An elderly couple, however, exchanged knowing looks. They had witnessed similar injustices in their own lives. The woman's face flushed with anger, while the man's jaw tightened in response to the blatant act of racism being perpetuated before them. In that adverse moment, the mother of the attorney emerged from the back of the store, drawn by the commotion. She entered just in time to see her son being treated with hostility, her heart sinking at the sight. She rushed forward, determined to confront the growing injustice. "What on earth is going on here?" she demanded, her voice rising above the murmurs, sparking a flicker of hope in some onlookers. The security guard turned to her, his confidence wavering under her stern gaze. "Ma'am, this man is not a customer. He doesn't belong here," he insisted, but there was a tremor in his tone, uncertain of the ground he stood on. With an unwavering stance, she replied, "Is that so? How do you know that?" "Just because of the color of his skin." The room teetered on the edge of silence, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. The attorney's mother continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "He is an accomplished attorney. He fights for justice in our community while you perpetuate inequality right here. I demand to know why you treat my son like this." Each word dripped with the kind of bottled-up indignation that finally found a release. The guard's face paled as understanding seeped into the situation. A nervous sweat broke out on his brow, and he stammered, trying to regain control. The mix of fear and anger in his eyes told a different story, a man confronted by his own prejudices in the most public of arenas. No longer was he an impenetrable figure, now he was vulnerable, exposed within the gaze of customers who had been witnessing the ordeal. Tensions flared even more as some people began to shift uneasily, whispering their support for the attorney and his mother. As the gravity of the incident sank in, the atmosphere shifted. Voices emerged from the crowd, some affirming the mother's stance while others hesitated, caught off guard by the tableau before them. It was a moment that highlighted the deep-seated issues of race and discrimination, forcing everyone to confront their own positions within the spectrum of societal prejudice. The divided reactions within the room only amplified the reality that this was a larger conversation, one that needed to be had. Realizing the slow spiral into chaos, the dealership manager stepped in, his face a mask of concern. He cleared his throat, attempting to regain some semblance of order, but the tension was far from abated. The mother seized the opportunity, proposing a dialogue, not just about her son's treatment, but a broader conversation on racism and prejudice that had long been swept under the rug. Some customers began to nod in agreement, the atmosphere shifting slowly but surely toward the possibility of collective understanding. In the following moments, the attorney, bolstered by his mother's defense, found his voice amidst the chaos. "It's time we stop being silent. We all have a role in fighting against racism," he asserted, looking collectively at the audience who had gathered, some with their cameras put away, listening intently. Each testimony shared, from customers recounting past experiences of unfair treatment to the mother's passionate address about the need for justice, began to create a ripple effect, fostering an unexpected unity among the crowd. The security guard, no longer the powerful figure shielding prejudice, stood to the side, caught in the flux of sentiments, grappling with the exposure of his actions. As the energy shifted, ideas began to emerge. Attendees expressed a desire for change, and from this collective will, the suggestion arose for the dealership to commit to regular events focused on inclusion and diversity training. The attorney, feeling a surge of purpose, offered to help facilitate these discussions, ensuring that this incident would not be brushed aside but transformed into an opportunity for growth and understanding. The crescendo of voices echoed a single message: the importance of challenging racism in everyday situations. As word spread about the transformative event taking shape within the dealership, the remnants of embarrassment could still be seen on the security guard's face, but the seeds of reflection had already begun to bloom. There lay a path to understanding, learning, and eventually changing for the better. Months later, the dealership finally hosted its long-anticipated event dedicated to inclusion and diversity. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, customers and community members filling the space to partake in discussions, workshops, and panels. With the attorney as a prominent speaker alongside his mother, the message echoed loud and clear: an acceptance of responsibility, a fight for justice, and the collective strength of the community to stand together against prejudice. This day marked a significant change, a departure from indifference into action. The once silent atmosphere in the dealership transformed into one of empowerment, where stories were shared organically, creating bridges between identities. The attorney and his mother glanced around, pride swelling in their chests. They had worked relentlessly for this moment. The former security guard was now a participant, actively engaging in conversations and absorbing the various perspectives that shared the stage with his own. Through this journey, they had all learned the importance of empathy, the realization that silence only perpetuates the issue at hand. The attorney's story of resilience, coupled with the lessons learned by those once passive onlookers, created an invaluable legacy. It fostered an environment where respect, inclusion, and understanding became the bedrock principles of a community striving toward equality. The finale came alive with the voices of many amplifying the narrative of courage and acceptance. They had not only changed a dealership, but the hearts and minds of all who had crossed that threshold. A beacon was lit, illuminating the need for vigilance in the fight against racism, a struggle that is constant and ever-evolving but undeniably powerful when pursued together. In this space, what began with a discriminatory act evolved into a profound commitment to fostering change and celebrating diversity, an unyielding testament to the strength found within solidarity. The bustling dealership was filled with the sound of excited chatter, the scent of polished leather and the fresh car air lingering like the promise of adventure. Cars lined up, mesmerizing in their glossy finishes and enticing designs. Among them stood a well-dressed man, a sharp-looking black attorney who had come to explore the latest models with an excitement that bubbled just beneath the surface. He had spent years advocating for justice, ensuring the oppressed had a voice and flourished in the face of adversity. Yet today, he was met with an unwarranted dose of scrutiny, an unyielding presence shadowing him just as he approached a sleek black sedan. The security guard, a hulking figure with a frown carved into his features, seemed less interested in ensuring safety and more focused on him than on the myriad customers casually wandering the showroom. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, an edge of suspicion glimmering in his tone. The attorney straightened his posture, casting a glance at the people around him. "No, I'm just browsing," he replied, trying to keep his voice even, though the tone of the guard suggested otherwise, veiling a deeper discomfort that stirred within him. The air thrummed with palpable tension as the guard moved closer, his presence more menacing than protective. I need to make sure everyone in the showroom is a legitimate customer, he insisted, eyes narrowed. To him, the attorney was merely a statistic, an outsider to be scrutinized and questioned, a reminder of the biases still woven into the fabric of daily life. For a moment, the attorney's heart raced, caught between indignation and a sense of vulnerability that was all too familiar. He stood firm, redirecting an assertive gaze at the guard. "I assure you I belong here," he replied with a calm intensity, but the tension remained thick, hanging like a storm cloud above their heads. As the interaction unfolded, a woman brushed through the glass doors, her presence commanding and graceful. She held an air of authority that turned heads. The moment she caught sight of her son being accosted, her heart dropped, and she rushed toward them, fueled by an instinctive need to protect. "What's happening here?" she demanded, her voice slicing through the air, drawing the attention of customers who had begun to pause and watch the escalating scene unfold. Witnesses murmured amongst themselves, while the guard's expression shifted to something akin to apprehension. He weighed his words as the attorney's mother stepped up, her righteous fire igniting. "Why are you treating my son like a criminal in a place where he has every right to be?" she challenged, fierce and unwavering. There was an underlying urgency in her voice that resonated with those nearby. The crowd drew closer, captivated and bubbling with emotions ranging from sympathy to indignation as they sensed the brewing storm in front of them. The guard faltered, glossing over the unease brewing in the room. "He just doesn't fit the normal customer profile," he stuttered, trying desperately to assert an authority that felt increasingly flimsy. The attorney's mother took a step closer, every fiber of her being radiating confidence. "Normal? What does that even mean? My son is a respected attorney with a powerful voice in civil rights. And as for me, I am an advocate for equality in our community. This behavior is unacceptable." Her declaration rippled through the crowd, and a collective gasp surged forward as people began to re-evaluate their positions in this unfolding drama. With tension building, the audience had shifted from passive onlookers to engaged participants, grappling with their own beliefs and biases. Many of the customers who had been casually browsing suddenly connected the dots, glancing between the menacing guard and the powerful woman illuminating the intricacies of discrimination. Encouraged by the fervor in her voice, some began to step forward, offering their support. "That's right." One older gentleman called out, his hands clenched into fists. "You can't treat someone like that just because they don't fit some imaginary mold." Others in the crowd shrugged in discomfort, their loyalty seemingly tethered to the security guard who remained rigid and unchanged. "But rules are rules," one woman argued, crossing her arms defensively. "We can't just let anyone walk in." Her sentiments echoed and rippled, as if a line had been drawn in the sand between those advocating for justice and equality and those clinging to outdated codes of conduct. Meanwhile, the manager of the dealership emerged from the back, trying to pinpoint the heart of the uproar. His face reflected a mixture of confusion and authority as he desperately sought to mediate the growing divide that had unfolded. "All right, everyone, let's just take a moment," he began, but was drowned out by escalating voices on both ends. The crowd had branched into factions, with tensions rising like an unwinding spring. The climate within the dealership felt charged, the air thick with the scent of confrontation. Attendees joined in, each voice contributing to the cacophony of dialogue, reflections of their own experiences with bias or righteousness swirling around them. The manager attempted to intercede, trying to quiet the escalating tempers. With the attorney's mother standing firm, her voice passionate and steady, it became a battle of wills, the attorney's dignity juxtaposed against the outdated notions encapsulated in the guard's unwavering stance. "Enough is enough," the attorney's mother proclaimed, her words reverberating across the room. Through her fervor, she sought to shine a light on the very nature of the beliefs being challenged. "Racism doesn't belong here, nor does ignorance. We can all choose to reject these prejudices and create a space of inclusion." The audience leaned in, captivated, her demand for accountability transformed into a call for action. Pausing for a breath, she looked around, gauging the reactions of the thoughtful faces that surrounded her. The veil of tension had begun to lift, leaving room for introspection. Those previously ambivalent now found themselves questioning their own complicity. What constituted normal, and why did it lead to judgment? The guard, still staunchly refusing to relent, stood out as isolation bore down upon him. His own side was dwindling as the spotlight increasingly turned toward discrimination's outdated narrative. The atmosphere gradually shifted as stories began to flow among the crowd. Customers poured forth their experiences of being marginalized, misjudged, or silenced, revealing that everyone carried a story, a recollection of pain wrapped in the complexity of identity. This exchange crystallized the attorney's mother's point as more individuals stepped forward, aligning against prejudice and struggling with their own biases. Captivated, the crowd absorbed the energy of defiance while sharing newfound solidarity for the cause. The manager noticed how the tide had turned against the security guard. Recognizing his precarious position, he took a decisive step forward, finally raising his voice above the din. Regardless of how you view this incident, we cannot tolerate any form of discrimination in this dealership. It's damaging not just to my business but to our entire community, he stated with a firmness that signaled a definitive shift. The security guard's face darkened. The shock of being backed into a corner bore down on him as unease crept into the shadows of his resolve. In that charged moment, the dynamics began to favor the attorney and his mother. Witnessing their moral stand sparked something within the hearts of the onlookers, igniting a collective desire for meaningful change. As feelings of empowerment strummed the air, a renewed sense of community emerged, transforming the tense encounter into a catalyst for reflection and action. The concealed truths, those of prejudice and ignorance, were thrust into the limelight, fleshing themselves out against an aching tapestry of shared experiences. The crowd grew animated with voices harmonizing in a chorus of shared humanity. The unity forming was palpable, an energy that surged forward, a commitment to change that transcended this single confrontation. Eventually, the manager extended a hand toward the attorney and his mother, acknowledging their plight with sincerity in his eyes. "We need to do better, and I would like to invite you both to lead a discussion here about inclusivity and respect. Let's turn this into something meaningful. Let's create a dealership where everyone feels welcome." A swell of applause rippled through the crowd, an acknowledgement of the empowerment that had arisen from this incident. Though the defining moment began with a wave of hostility, it had transformed into something undeniably powerful, a profound acknowledgement of wrongs and a relentless commitment to seek justice and equality. As the attorney and his mother stood tall in that dealership amidst the echoes of support, they realized they had not only defended their dignity but had sparked a movement, a catalyst for challenging discrimination and fostering inclusivity. This encounter would be remembered not just as a moment of confrontation, but as a pivotal point for change. No longer would silence shield prejudice. The actions taken that day would resonate within the walls of the dealership, converting a hesitant space into one of hope, learning, and empathy, a celebration of the diversity that enriches the human experience. And as the sun began to set on that eventful day, there was a profound sense that the ripples of courageous acts would extend far beyond the showroom floor, urging others to rise and join the fight against injustice with every shared voice and every turned tide. As the atmosphere within the dealership vibrated with the collective energy of solidarity, the attorney and his mother stood at the center of a movement ignited by a confrontation that had initially felt so disheartening. With customers rallying behind them, there emerged a palpable need to address the very fabric of racism and discrimination that had woven itself insidiously into daily interactions. The attorney sensed a unique opportunity brewing before him, a chance to create a dialogue that would not only foster understanding but also begin the healing process for everyone involved. Gathering his breath amid the murmurs of agreement from the crowd, he called for attention, a soft yet unwavering voice cutting through the anxious chatter. "Thank you all for standing beside us," he began, the weight of gratitude resonating in his words. "This conversation must go beyond what happened today. It's about recognizing how pervasive these issues can be, how they affect our communities, and how many of us have felt the sting of prejudice in one form or another." His gaze swept across the faces of both supporters and hesitant witnesses, keen on cradling their shared experiences within an embrace of empathy. One by one, people began to share their narratives. An elderly woman spoke first, her voice trembling yet filled with conviction. "I remember when I was treated unfairly in many stores just because of my age, looked at as if I was invisible, or worse, just a burden. It feels horrifying to be dismissed." Her revelation struck a chord, and heads began to nod. A young man chimed in next, recalling how he had been followed around by security in another store simply for being black. "You don't realize how much that weighs on you until it happens, so often you start to doubt your place in the world," he said, his words echoing the experiences of many present in that moment. The stories flowed freely, with each voice, young and old, diverse in race and experience, contributing to a rich tapestry of shared pain and resilience. There was catharsis in the air, an acknowledgement of the wounds that often remained hidden, thrust into the light where they could no longer fester in silence. As conversation surged, a striking realization began to form among the participants. What they faced individually might have different manifestations, but the underlying themes were achingly similar. Each tale of discrimination resonated as a reminder that injustice thrives in silence, and only by confronting it openly can change take root. Meanwhile, the security guard stood off to the side, a heavy weight of reflection settling upon him. The swell of voices, once threatening, now filled him with an unsettling awareness as he began to revisit the choices he made that day. He had acted according to assumptions deeply ingrained within him, wielding his power in an unthinking manner that overlooked individual dignity. As customers shared their experiences, he found himself grappling with discomfort, remorse gnawing at his conscience. "I thought I was doing my job," he mused quietly, recalling how he failed to see the dignity of the person before him. The stories revealed the ripple effects of his actions beyond this one interaction. They spoke to decades of ingrained prejudice and misconceptions. Gradually, he found the courage to step forward, his voice barely above a whisper but resolute. I need to apologize," he stammered, vulnerability spilling forth. "I didn't see the whole picture. I let my assumptions dictate my actions, and I can't express how sorry I am for treating you the way I did." The room fell into a hush, breaths held tightly as they processed this unexpected turn. Instead of facing hostility or outrage, the attorney and his mother extended the olive branch of understanding, inviting him to sincerely join the conversation as a participant and a learner. Their acceptance sparked an unexpected warmth in the crowd. "Thank you for your honesty," the attorney said, his tone reflective yet hopeful. "It takes courage to confront one's mistakes. We're all here today to grow. Let's use this moment to learn from one another." The evolution of their dialogue transformed the atmosphere once again, from tension to healing, from judgment to a shared commitment to accountability. The security guard's heartfelt acknowledgement not only broke down barriers but also opened the door to collective understanding, reinforcing that redemption is a vital part of the journey toward equality. Emboldened by the shift in mindset, the dealership's manager stepped forward, a sense of purpose guiding his stride. "We must take this spirit of introspection and unity and translate it into something actionable," he declared, addressing the crowd. "We can't let this moment be fleeting. Let's establish regular training sessions aimed at fostering inclusion and diversity within our dealership. It's time we educate ourselves about bias and discrimination. We need to create a space where everyone feels welcomed and respected." The room erupted into applause, a resounding affirmation of the direction they were heading. The attorney's heart swelled with pride, feeling the solidarity that buzzed around him. He raised his hand for silence, his eyes twinkling with resolve. "I would be honored to contribute to these sessions and offer my insights on civil rights. We can start building a foundation for authentic dialogue that respects our differences and bridges our divides." Ecstatic murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, an overwhelming sense of purpose igniting among them. Amid the renewed energy, they saw illuminated possibilities, a future where education about diversity was prioritized, where individuals would not only understand the challenges they faced but also develop the tools to combat them. These training sessions would ripple into the hearts and minds of every employee, changing the culture from within, ensuring that going forward, bias would wither away under the light of understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon outside the dealership's expansive windows, casting golden rays about the room, the energy of hope lingered in the air. Customers exchanged contact information, pledging to help one another in nurturing the initiative. The attorney's mother, proud of the transformation her son had catalyzed, leaned into him with a warm smile. "Today we've initiated something powerful," she whispered, "and this is just the beginning." With newfound determination, they prepared to take their conversations beyond the dealership, fueled by an ethos of empathy that would branch into the wider community. Armed with powerful narratives, they formed connections that would echo across neighborhoods, urging others to recognize the crucial importance of advocating for justice and dismantling systems of prejudice. The initiative championed by the dealership was not merely about eradicating racism and discrimination within its walls. It had become a lifeline, a rallying cry for community engagement. It aimed to inspire others to take accountability for the biases they carried and to engage in conversations that encourage growth. In the weeks that followed, the dealership became a beacon of hope, hosting conversations filled with honesty, respect, and transformative growth. People from all walks of life came together, sharing their stories and learning from one another. It turned into a movement that spread through the community like wildfire. The tales shared during those sessions were no longer whispers of isolation. They morphed into affirmations of collective strength. Through these endeavors, they discovered newfound resilience within themselves, finding empowerment through a commitment to learning, understanding, and outreach. They championed a future where differences were celebrated, and where everyone had the opportunity to flourish without fear of judgment. It wasn't just a change in the dealership, it was the dawn of a movement, one that vibrated with the promise of unity and justice. The attorney and his mother had inspired a wave of courage that rippled outwards, dissolving the silos of discrimination they once lived under, replacing them with respect, understanding, and the acknowledgement that everyone, regardless of their background, deserves dignity. In this shared space of understanding, they forged the ties of community, committed to nurturing a society that bloomed with compassion and equity, a legacy etched into the hearts of all who stepped through those doors. In the warmth of human connection, they found what it truly meant to stand together, empowered to create a more just world, one conversation at a time. In the wake of an intense afternoon that had shaken the foundations of an otherwise ordinary day, the security guard stood alone, wrestling with the gnawing weight of guilt that wrapped around him like an unforgiving shroud. The confrontation with the attorney and his mother had been a turning point, not just for them, but for him as well. He couldn't shake the images of their hurt, their surprise, and the deep injustice that had unfolded before his very eyes. It became increasingly clear that the moment he had chosen to act upon his biases had repercussions far beyond the immediate encounter. It resonated with the long histories of prejudice that had seeped into the unspoken social contract governing their community. Driven by an overwhelming urge to make amends, the guard took a deep breath and resolved to approach the attorney and his mother. As he walked towards them, every step felt like traversing a chasm of his own making. The stakes were high. He was stepping into a moment that demanded vulnerability, honesty, and a profound ability to acknowledge not only one's own failures but also the pain he had caused others. He found himself standing before them, anxiety bubbling beneath the surface, uncertain of how they would receive his words. "Can we talk?" he managed to say, his voice quaking slightly. The attorney and his mother turned to face him, expressions a mixture of curiosity and caution. I need to apologize for how I treated you," he continued, the sincerity surfacing in his tone. "I recognize now that my actions were not just wrong, they were hurtful. I let my prejudgments dictate how I treated you, and I'm truly sorry for that." Silence enveloped them, thick with the weight of his admission. The attorney's mother, initially hesitant, scrutinized the guard's expression. She was not ready to dismiss his apology, but she needed to understand the depth of his remorse. "Why now?" she finally asked, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "What made you realize that your actions were wrong?" The security guard's heart raced as he prepared to peel back the layers that had shielded him from accountability for so long. "I've been listening to everyone here," he confessed. "Hearing those stories today opened my eyes. I realize that my actions are a part of a larger problem. It's not just about me, it's about all of us and our community." He took a moment to gather his thoughts, his gaze alternately meeting theirs as he spoke. "I know this doesn't erase the pain I caused, but I want to learn how I can be better, how I can contribute to change instead of perpetuating the cycle of discrimination." There was a palpable shift in the air. The attorney observed the guard closely, searching for the threads of authenticity in his words. He sensed the guard's genuine desire to change, something that did not often manifest in such confrontational scenarios. The guard's willingness to engage in a conversation about his mistakes was a brave first step, and it gave the attorney hope that this could transform into something constructive. "Thank you for coming forward," the attorney said with a tone that was both firm and forgiving. "It takes courage to admit when you've hurt someone, and I appreciate your honesty. Open dialogue is the key to understanding." He glanced at his mother, and after a moment of silent communication, she nodded in agreement. "I accept your apology, but understand that this is just the beginning. You have to commit to change, not just for us but for yourself and others." As the conversation between them unfolded, something extraordinary began to happen. A small crowd of customers, who had gathered nearby, watched intently, sensing the importance of this moment. The tension that had filled the air earlier transformed into something indescribably hopeful, as more individuals felt encouraged to voice their own stories of discrimination and the impact it had had on their lives. "We're all affected," a middle-aged woman spoke up, her voice steady as she stood proudly among the group. "I've faced my own battles with discrimination in many places. It starts with one person acknowledging their privilege and stepping forward." Her words sparked a courageous dialogue, where stories of shared experiences intertwined, creating a vibrant tapestry of resilience and understanding. One after another, the customers began to share their journeys, the painful recollections of being judged, overlooked, or treated differently. Each narrative added another layer of connection between them, reinforcing a profound sense of community born from their unified experiences. Those who had lived through discrimination recognized the need for each other's support, while others, like the security guard, were provided a unique chance to learn about the pervasive effects of their actions and assumptions. As the atmosphere charged with empathy deepened, so too did the guard's sense of purpose. He realized that this was not merely about him seeking forgiveness, but rather about how he could actively change the narrative. With each shared story, he grew increasingly motivated to become part of the solution that the community desperately needed. He started participating in the discussions more fervently, asking questions and attuning himself to the complexities of bias, privilege, and social justice. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, the security guard began to immerse himself in learning about diversity and inclusion. He participated in workshops, read books, and engaged in conversations with community leaders advocating for change. It became his quest to transform himself from someone who had once perpetuated stereotypes into an ally for those who had faced injustice. His journey wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of discomfort and trials in unlearning ingrained biases, but he leaned into this discomfort, understanding that growth often lies just outside one's comfort zone. His newfound knowledge and commitment didn't go unnoticed. Colleagues began to see him as an example of transformation and accountability, a testimony to the possibility of change if one chose to confront their shortcomings. The security guard shared his learning experiences with others, encouraging them to join him in championing a more inclusive environment. Local leaders who had been part of the discussions recognized the significance of these changes within the dealership and began to collaborate on broader community initiatives aimed at promoting empathy and understanding. The conversations that started with a small group transformed into community workshops, outreach programs, and educational initiatives that transcended the walls of the dealership and reached into the hearts and minds of many. As the security guard took on an active role in these initiatives, he became a symbol of hope, a poignant reminder that anyone capable of causing harm also holds the potential for healing. His evolution stood as a beacon for others who wished to do the same, shedding light on the path toward a more empathetic future. Through his efforts, he inspired others to confront their biases, emphasizing that meaningful change can begin with a single act of courage, a simple apology, an open heart, and a willingness to listen. The impact of the dealership's transformation reverberated throughout the community, fostering a culture that prioritizes inclusivity and celebrates diversity. They created a ripple effect, inspiring others to take part in the movement toward equity and justice. The lessons learned from those rich conversations became integral to an ongoing journey that illuminated the importance of unity, teaching all who participated that when people come together, share their stories, and embrace their differences, they forge a brighter, more equitable future for everyone. As the security guard stood among his coworkers and community during one of the workshops he helped facilitate, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride wash over him. Their journey had started with a moment of confrontation, but it had blossomed into a collective effort, unifying countless voices and experiences into a powerful movement for change. The healing journey was far from over, but together, they were not merely contributors to discussions about diversity. They were champions of a cause that meant something profound to all of them. In this shared endeavor, they found that through vulnerability, honesty, and a commitment to growth, reconciliation and understanding were not just possible, they were within their grasp. The future looked bright, vibrant with the promise of unity and the strength of community forged through shared experience and renewed purpose. In the heart of the bustling community, the dealership became a beacon of hope and transformation, generating excitement for an upcoming event dedicated to inclusion and diversity. The air buzzed with anticipation as individuals from various walks of life prepared to converge for a day that promised to foster understanding and shared experiences. The organizers worked tirelessly to create an environment that encouraged open dialogue and learning, creating a safe space where voices could be lifted and heard. A range of activities was planned, including panel discussions, workshops, and powerful keynote speeches, drawing in participants from all corners of the community who sought to engage in meaningful conversations about racism and prejudice. As the day of the event approached, both the attorney and his mother felt a sense of purpose that propelled them forward. Reflecting on their journey from a painful encounter to this moment of empowerment, they began to understand the profound impact their participation could have. They were no longer just victims of discrimination. They were poised to be champions for change, committed to leveraging their experiences to educate others. This newfound sense of agency stirred a mixture of nerves and excitement within them as they prepared not only to share their stories but also to inspire change. On the day of the event, the dealership's lobby was transformed into an inviting space decorated with a tapestry of diversity, a spectrum of colors, cultures, and backgrounds represented in vivid displays of art and information. The community members, both familiar and new to one another, filled the room, animatedly discussing various topics while awaiting the commencement of the program. The palpable energy was infectious, as each individual brought their unique perspective and experiences into the shared space. As the program began, the audience settled into chairs arranged in a semicircle, all eyes on the stage that had been thoughtfully prepared. The organizers welcomed everyone with open arms, emphasizing the importance of this gathering. They framed the event as not just a discussion but a movement of sorts, an opportunity to affirm collective dignity and justice, a chance to engage in honest reflection about the challenges posed by racism and discrimination. It was during the opening panel that the attorney took the stage, poised to share his story with the audience. He felt a surge of confidence coursing through him, a sense of resolve fueled by the knowledge that his words could resonate with someone who might need them today. He calmly approached the microphone, his heart racing in tandem with the anticipation radiating from those seated in front of him. The moment was no longer about fear, it was about confronting the shadows of injustice head-on with the light of truth. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady and clear, echoing across the room. "We gather today not only to discuss inclusion and diversity, but to confront the hard truths surrounding racism." He took a deep breath, allowing the weight of his words to settle in. "Like many of you, I have faced the harsh realities of discrimination. My experience is not unique, it is woven into the fabric of our society. Today, I stand before you not to dwell on the pain but to illuminate the path forward." With the audience hanging on his every word, the attorney shared the story of that fateful day at the dealership, the encounter with the security guard, the disregard for his dignity, and the emotional aftermath that followed. He spoke candidly about the anger and confusion, the feelings of isolation that often accompany such experiences. But he also highlighted the awakening that had come in the following weeks, how those discussions had shifted the narrative from victimhood to empowerment. "Every time we face prejudice, it's an opportunity to stand taller and advocate for change," he asserted, his gaze sweeping over the faces in the crowd. "To fight against racism and bias, we must confront these issues earnestly, engaging not just in conversations, but in actions that dismantle discrimination in our communities." With the audience captivated, his mother then joined him on stage, proud and resolute. She voiced her gratitude for the opportunity to speak alongside her son, highlighting the powerful role that families play in these conversations. "Together, we can pave the way for future generations," she encouraged. "It is crucial that we teach our children empathy and understanding, equipping them to challenge the status quo. We must model the values of kindness, respect, and inclusion." As they exchanged ideas and experiences, one panelist after another enriched the dialogue, recounting moments of triumph and resilience within their own battles against discrimination. There was a palpable sense of solidarity within the room. Individuals who had been silenced found their voices echoing within a collective narrative of struggle and hope. The discussions blossomed into workshops that followed, where groups of diverse participants engaged in intimate conversations, candidly sharing their experiences and learning from one another. As the event unfolded, community members began to formulate strategies for action, igniting plans to launch initiatives aimed at combating discrimination at all levels, from local schools to business environments. The sense of urgency became a catalyst for collaboration. Ideas flowed freely as participants considered tangible ways to promote awareness, education, and engagement. Throughout the day, stories transformed into plans for future advocacy, igniting a movement where individuals were inspired to proclaim their commitment to fostering inclusion. The energy of the gathering turned into a collective force, people exchanging contact information, pledging to remain connected, and promising to extend the momentum beyond this singular event. They recognized that this was more than just a day of conversation. It was the beginning of an actionable movement committed to challenging injustice wherever it might arise. As evening fell, the event culminated in a powerful reflection, where the attorney stood once more at the podium. The room, now filled with laughter, camaraderie, and newfound determination, fell silent as he began to wrap up. "Today we have demonstrated that when we come together to confront difficult issues with honesty and compassion, we can effect change. But let us remember, our commitment must extend beyond these walls." His voice brimmed with passion and urgency. "Every conversation we have, every action we take, can contribute to creating a world where dignity is not conditional and diversity is celebrated." Applause erupted throughout the auditorium, reverberating with a shared understanding that this was just the start of a much larger initiative. People rose from their seats, energized by the atmosphere of empowerment. The commitment to the cause hung thick in the air, the flames of inspiration ignited as individuals embraced one another, forming new connections of purpose and shared goals. The journey was not over, it was just beginning. As community members departed from the dealership that day, they carried forward a shared promise, a collective vow to challenge racism and discrimination whenever and wherever they encountered it. Their stories, once silenced, became instruments of change as they connected, collaborated, and committed to making the world more inclusive. In the months that followed, the dealership emerged as a central hub for ongoing discussions about diversity and inclusion, hosting regular events that continued to engage and inspire. The attorney and his mother maintained their involvement, helping to foster a culture of learning and growth, invigorated by the overwhelming support of their community. The commitment to bring awareness to issues of racism, privilege, and social justice became not just a history book, it became a living, breathing movement. Through their efforts, they came to realize that every voice matters, and within every story lies the potential to spark change. They learned that facing prejudice and discrimination, while challenging, is a journey that is best taken together, a solidarity that strengthens with each shared experience. Together, they were building a legacy of compassion, action, and unity, a testament to the transformative power of community. And as they looked ahead, they were filled with hope for a future where inclusion and diversity were lived values, where respect for every individual would be paramount, and where the pain of the past would serve as the foundation for a brighter tomorrow. In the aftermath of the event dedicated to inclusion and diversity, the dealership found itself transformed into a symbol of hope and change within the community. The success of that day reverberated far beyond the walls of the building. It sparked a movement aimed at challenging ingrained prejudices and fostering an environment of respect and understanding. The panels, discussions, and workshops had ignited a fire in the hearts of attendees, compelling them to take actionable steps against discrimination, creating a ripple effect that was felt across the entire locality. Months passed, and the dealership continued to be a hub for dialogue centered around inclusion. The organizers were determined to maintain the momentum of the event, hosting regular forums and workshops where community members could come together to learn, share experiences, and build relationships. The attorney and his mother remained actively involved, tirelessly facilitating discussions and encouraging participation from all demographics. Their voices, now paired with numerous allies, became crucial in promoting the message that respect and understanding are vital components of a thriving community. Unexpectedly, a friendship blossomed between the attorney and the security guard who had once been at the center of the conflict. Initially, both were hesitant to approach each other, each carrying their individual burdens and misconceptions. But as fate would have it, an opportunity for conversation arose during one of the follow-up events. With the atmosphere charged with openness, they found themselves seated next to one another, both reflecting on their past experiences. The attorney, with a sense of vulnerability, began to share his sentiments about that day, how the encounter had shaken him to his core, and ultimately, led him down a path of advocacy and enlightenment. The security guard listened intently, his hardened exterior gradually softening as the attorney unveiled the emotional wounds inflicted by racism. In turn, the security guard articulated his own journey, explaining the pressures he faced in his role, revealing how he, too, had internalized societal biases that led him to act too quickly that day. In these moments of honesty, a bridge began to form, one built on mutual understanding and shared aspirations for a better future. They realized that while their experiences on that fateful day had been painful, they had also become the catalyst for transformative change. The attorney and the security guard came to understand that their individual journeys, fraught with struggle and growth, were not so dissimilar after all. They began to partner in facilitating workshops together, each learning from the other's unique perspective. Their evolving friendship became a powerful testament to the theme of the very event that sparked this transformation. As they worked side by side, they shared tales of hope, resilience, and the recognition that understanding the other is crucial for dismantling prejudice. They highlighted the need for empathy, a concept often spoken of but seldom practiced. Encounters that had once defined them as foes shifted into opportunities for allies to connect deeply. Their journey inspired others to reconsider their relationships and the biases they may have unconsciously nurtured. Through this unlikely alliance, they launched community initiatives focused on fostering conversations that examined the root causes of prejudice and discrimination. Workshops were structured not just to address the challenges of racism, but to build personal relationships among participants. The duo encouraged individuals to share their own stories, fostering empathy and vulnerability in spaces seemingly designed for confrontation. The walls that once divided them began to crumble, revealing a shared humanity that resonated with everyone involved. As their friendship flourished, they became champions of change not only for their community but also for themselves. They came to understand that promoting inclusion was not just about addressing large societal issues. It was equally about making personal commitments to confront their biases and engage with people from all backgrounds on a meaningful level. They began to encourage others to take personal responsibility, fostering an environment where community members could learn from each other, grow, and encourage necessary changes. The importance of individual and collective responsibility became a central theme in their outreach efforts. They inspired each workshop participant to reflect on their actions and behaviors, cultivating a culture where introspection and growth were valued. Those lessons resonated widely, creating a collective consciousness focused on justice and equality. The transformation echoed through schools, local businesses, and within individual households as the message of empowerment and engagement spread. One powerful message resonated with everyone: change cannot be achieved in isolation. It requires the commitment of individuals and communities alike. By taking personal ownership of their contributions, be it through advocacy, listening, or simply engaging in conversation, people began to understand their roles in creating a more inclusive society. The attorney and his mother maintained their involvement, helping to foster a culture of learning and growth, invigorated by the overwhelming support of their community. The commitment to bring awareness to issues of racism, privilege, and social justice became not just a history book, it became a living, breathing movement. Through their efforts, they came to realize that every voice matters, and within every story lies the potential to spark change. They learned that facing prejudice and discrimination, while challenging, is a journey that is best taken together, a solidarity that strengthens with each shared experience. Together, they were building a legacy of compassion, action, and unity, a testament to the transformative power of community. And as they looked ahead, they were filled with hope for a future where inclusion and diversity were lived values, where respect for every individual would be paramount, and where the pain of the past would serve as the foundation for a brighter tomorrow. In the aftermath of the event dedicated to inclusion and diversity, the dealership found itself transformed into a symbol of hope and change within the community. The success of that day reverberated far beyond the walls of the building. It sparked a movement aimed at challenging ingrained prejudices and fostering an environment of respect and understanding. The panels, discussions, and workshops had ignited a fire in the hearts of attendees, compelling them to take actionable steps against discrimination, creating a ripple effect that was felt across the entire locality. Months passed, and the dealership continued to be a hub for dialogue centered around inclusion. The organizers were determined to maintain the momentum of the event, hosting regular forums and workshops where community members could come together to learn, share experiences, and build relationships. The attorney and his mother remained actively involved, tirelessly facilitating discussions and encouraging participation from all demographics. Their voices, now paired with numerous allies, became crucial in promoting the message that respect and understanding are vital components of a thriving community. Unexpectedly, a friendship blossomed between the attorney and the security guard who had once been at the center of the conflict. Initially, both were hesitant to approach each other, each carrying their individual burdens and misconceptions. But as fate would have it, an opportunity for conversation arose during one of the follow-up events. With the atmosphere charged with openness, they found themselves seated next to one another, both reflecting on their past experiences. The attorney, with a sense of vulnerability, began to share his sentiments about that day, how the encounter had shaken him to his core, and ultimately, led him down a path of advocacy and enlightenment. The security guard listened intently, his hardened exterior gradually softening as the attorney unveiled the emotional wounds inflicted by racism. In turn, the security guard articulated his own journey, explaining the pressures he faced in his role, revealing how he, too, had internalized societal biases that led him to act too quickly that day. In these moments of honesty, a bridge began to form, one built on mutual understanding and shared aspirations for a better future. They realized that while their experiences on that fateful day had been painful, they had also become the catalyst for transformative change. The attorney and the security guard came to understand that their individual journeys, fraught with struggle and growth, were not so dissimilar after all. They began to partner in facilitating workshops together, each learning from the other's unique perspective. Their evolving friendship became a powerful testament to the theme of the very event that sparked this transformation. As they worked side by side, they shared tales of hope, resilience, and the recognition that understanding the other is crucial for dismantling prejudice. They highlighted the need for empathy, a concept often spoken of but seldom practiced. Encounters that had once defined them as foes shifted into opportunities for allies to connect deeply. Their journey inspired others to reconsider their relationships and the biases they may have unconsciously nurtured. Through this unlikely alliance, They launched community initiatives focused on fostering conversations that examined the root causes of prejudice and discrimination. Workshops were structured not just to address the challenges of racism, but to build personal relationships among participants. The duo encouraged individuals to share their own stories, fostering empathy and vulnerability in spaces seemingly designed for confrontation. The walls that once divided them began to crumble, revealing a shared humanity that resonated with everyone involved. As their friendship flourished, they became champions of change not only for their community but also for themselves. They came to understand that promoting inclusion was not just about addressing large societal issues. It was equally about making personal commitments to confront their biases and engage with people from all backgrounds on a meaningful level. They began to encourage others to take personal responsibility, fostering an environment where community members could learn from each other, grow, and encourage necessary changes. The importance of individual and collective responsibility became a central theme in their outreach efforts. They inspired each workshop participant to reflect on their actions and behaviors, cultivating a culture where introspection and growth were valued. Those lessons resonated widely, creating a collective consciousness focused on justice and equality. The transformation echoed through schools, local businesses, and within individual households as the message of empowerment and engagement spread. One powerful message resonated with everyone: change cannot be achieved in isolation. It requires the commitment of individuals and communities alike. By taking personal ownership of their contributions, be it through advocacy, listening, or simply engaging in conversation, people began to understand their roles in creating a more inclusive society.